My parents called me leftovers when my sister was born, and they kicked me out to make room. But after 9 years, they called me with bad news because karma had hit hard. Growing up, I always felt like I was kind of a disappointment to my parents. My mom and dad were expecting a girl. They had been trying to have a daughter for years without success until, well, I came along. They didn't hide the fact that they were disappointed I was a boy. I heard them say they felt like they had been given a spare, and I even remember hearing them call me the works sometimes. As a child, that didn't make much sense, but as I grew up, it affected me a lot. It was obvious I was just the child they had while they waited for something better. My parents kept trying to have another child. It was the only thing they talked about at family gatherings or when friends came over. I remember many people telling them they should be grateful to at least have a son, but my parents ignored them and said that unless it was a girl, they didn't have children. When I was 15, they finally had my sister, the daughter born of a miracle. She was everything they had been waiting for. They put all their attention, money, and time into her. From the moment she was born, I practically ceased to exist for my parents. I mean, I know I barely existed in their eyes before, but when my sister arrived, I became invisible. They barely had time for me, and they made sure that everything related to me was handled in a way that would allow them to focus on my sister. I knew she was their priority, and I accepted that. I mean, what else could I do? When I turned 18, it became very clear that they didn't want me home anymore. On my birthday, my parents sat me down, not for some kind of celebration, but to tell me they needed more space in the house and that I would have to move out. They thought that by being there, I was taking resources away from my sister. I tried to explain to them that I didn't have anywhere to go yet and that I just needed a couple of months to save up and find a place. But they didn't care. They said they had already fulfilled their legal obligations, that I had had plenty of time to prepare myself, and that I should be able to manage on my own. So, it was that simple. They threw me out. I didn't have much, just a few bags of clothes and the money I was able to scrape together by doing odd jobs during school. I ended up sleeping on friends' couches for a while, and then moved into a small, rundown apartment. Those first few years were tough. I worked all kinds of jobs, from night shifts at convenience stores to heavy labor at construction sites, just to make ends meet. I never had a steady job, and I was always worried about paying rent or buying food. And yes, there were nights when I went without eating because I didn't have enough to buy something. I didn't have contact with my parents during all that time. I didn't call them, and they never looked for me either. They didn't even send a message for the holidays or birthdays. I assumed they already had their perfect family, and I wasn't part of it. Yes, it hurt, but I learned to make peace with that. 9 years passed like this. I finally managed to build a stable life. I had a steady job, a small but comfortable place to live in, and friends who had become my chosen family. And then, out of the blue, a few days ago, I got a call from them. I honestly thought something must have happened to one of them, so I answered. Plus, I hadn't heard their voices in all these years, and they sounded somewhat erratic, to be honest. They told me they needed to talk to me about my sister. They continued to explain, in a very dramatic way, that my sister was going through a difficult time and that she was out of control. I was very shocked. I mean, she was only 12 or 13 years old. I didn't understand how things could be so bad already. But they told me she was constantly skipping school, getting into fights, and even getting into serious trouble. She was already experimenting with substances, hanging out with suspicious people, and doing things that seemed totally out of control for someone her age. They had to spend a ton of money getting her out of trouble. They tried to get her into different programs and paid for all these counseling sessions, but nothing worked. I understand that teenagers can be difficult, but I had a hard time imagining a girl so young letting herself spiral so much. It seemed like all those years of my parents' neglect and indulgence were finally catching up to them, but I couldn't take in how serious the situation had become. After telling me all this, my parents said they needed me to help them. They wanted me to come back into their lives to support them both emotionally and financially. They explained that taking care of my sister had taken a huge toll on them and that they couldn't take it anymore. They tried to make me feel guilty, saying that I was still their son and that the family should be united in difficult times. I was shocked to hear what my sister had become, but to hear them not even asking but demanding that I help them made me angry. Where was that united family when I was 18 and begged them to let me stay? Where was the family for me all these years? They kicked me out without a second thought, and now, just because things went wrong for them, they want me to come save the day. I told them no, that I was interested in helping them, and that I didn't see why I should get involved when I didn't raise my sister to be a nightmare. They didn't take it well. They told me I should help if I wanted to continue being a part of this family. After listening to them rant for a while, I just hung up. They still haven't stopped trying to contact me. My mom texted me, asking if I would be willing to listen to them over dinner this weekend. So, that's my family introduction. I know everyone here has their own experience with their family's craziness, so I wanted to share and see what you have to say about mine. Update 1. Things have moved on since my last post. Plus, I saw a lot of questions in the comments, so I'll try to clear a few things up. First, I want to make it clear that I have no negative feelings towards my sister at all. I don't know her. She was a baby when I left, and I haven't been around her since. To me, she's just a little girl I never got to know. Any anger or resentment I feel is not directed at her. I'm angry at my parents for how they treated me and how they made me feel like I didn't matter once she came along. They are the ones who ignored me, kicked me out, and now expect me to come back to save them. I also saw some questions about what my parents were like growing up and if there was any abuse. It's honestly hard to talk about, but I think it's important for everyone to understand why I feel this way. My parents weren't overly abusive, but they made it clear that I was more of a disappointment than anything else. They wanted a girl so badly, and they talked about it openly in front of me. I remember them saying things like, "We are finally going to have a daughter that we can love," and they treated me as if I were just there. Meanwhile, after she was born, it was like they couldn't wait for me to just go away. They saw me as the extra they didn't need, which probably explains why they kicked me out as soon as I turned 18. Anyway, I hope that clears things up. Now, here's the actual update. After reading your comments, I decided to get some advice and contact my parents. Many of you suggested that if I wanted to close this chapter or better understand what they wanted from me, I should meet with them in a neutral place. So, I ended up asking my parents if they would be willing to meet at a coffee shop in the city. They agreed, and I arrived with the mindset that this would just be a chat. They looked tired and much older than I remembered. Plus, they seemed stressed. At least they didn't waste time and got straight to the point. They started begging me for help and gave me more information than they had given me the last time we spoke. My sister's problems are worse than I initially thought. Beyond the substance use and legal issues, she has had to go to multiple rehab programs every year, which they've had to pay for out of their own pockets. She has been skipping school, running away, and causing problems with friends who are a bad influence. My parents said they have tried everything they could to change this behavior, but nothing has worked. It turns out they have sold many of their possessions, including my childhood home, to cover these expenses. They now live in a small apartment and are having a hard time making ends meet because of all the costs they've taken on to save my sister. They even talked about selling some valuable family items to raise more money, which they think will only last them a few more months. I realized that they weren't seeking forgiveness or understanding. They were looking for a solution, and for them, that solution was me. They needed someone to take on the financial burden of all the decisions they had made over the years. Listening to them talk only made me feel angrier and upset with them. They still didn't understand. They still didn't understand that they pushed me away so much that I barely knew them anymore. They didn't understand what it meant to be family, and yet they insisted that I treat them as such. I let them finish talking, but I told them that I couldn't help them. I explained that I had worked hard to build a life on my own after they left me stranded, and that I was in no financial or emotional position to support them. I also told them I felt no obligation to get them out of a mess they had created. They became enraged and told me I was being selfish, that I was abandoning my family, and that I was heartless for not helping my sister. I felt like nothing had changed. They were still trying to make me feel guilty, as if I owed them something. I ended up getting up from my chair and leaving because there wasn't much else to say. I keep thinking about their situation and my sister, whom I don't even know. I feel bad for her, but I don't feel like I can save her. It's painful to realize that, even after all these years, my parents don't see me as an individual with my own life and struggles. In the end, this is a problem my parents have to solve for themselves. They were the ones who caused it. Update 2. I'm back because things have gotten even crazier since my last update, which was just a week ago. I thought that telling my parents no was going to be enough and I could go back to my boring life. But not so. Just a few hours ago, I received a call from my sister. It's the first time I've heard directly from her, and it took me completely by surprise. I only have vague memories of her from when she was a baby, right before I left home. So when I answered the phone and heard her voice, I didn't know who she was until she introduced herself. I had no idea what to expect, but I figured maybe she just wanted to get in touch with me, considering everything my parents had said. The call started well. She was polite, almost sweet, which surprised me given everything I had heard about her behavior. She asked me to lend our parents money to help them with her current situation. I could tell she had rehearsed this speech because she was embellishing a lot, talking about how they were struggling and how I could save her. I stood my ground and told her I couldn't help them financially. I tried to keep a respectful tone and explained to her that my relationship with our parents was complicated and that I had to make decisions that were best for me. And then everything changed. She went from being polite to furious in a matter of seconds. She began to accuse me of being selfish and of abandoning my own sister. She kept saying that I was turning my back on my family and had always been jealous of her. She even claimed that I was acting like I was better than them because I left and started my own life while they had been the ones supporting me all this time. It was almost as if she had rehearsed those words too. I mean, it sounded exactly like something our parents would say. Plus, she sounded convinced that I should help them, as if she genuinely believed it was my job to step in and fix everything. It was so baffling that I couldn't even respond. After the call, I knew I needed to talk to my parents to find out what was going on, why my sister thought I had abandoned her, and where all this hostility and anger towards me was coming from. I called my parents, and as soon as they answered, I asked them directly if they had told my sister that I had abandoned her. They were hesitant at first, but quickly admitted that they had. For years, they told her that I had left the family because I couldn't handle sharing their attention with her. I was made out to be a selfish older brother who couldn't deal with having a younger sister and who broke ties with them out of spite. For all these years, my parents had been feeding my sister this distorted version of why I left, making me look like some kind of villain. It's not surprising that she felt like I had abandoned her. She grew up hearing that I left because I didn't want to share my parents' attention. I pretty much hung up after that, and they haven't tried to contact me again, although, of course, it's only been a few hours since I talked to them. Other than that, I honestly don't know how I feel right now. On one hand, I'm angry at my parents for lying to my sister about me and making her think that I was the one who walked away. But I'm also frustrated with my sister for lashing out at me and demanding that I help them, as if I owe them anything. I wish my parents had told her the truth about why I left. Maybe if they had, things would be different between my sister and me. I may not have been able to help my parents financially, but I definitely would have been able to reach out to my sister and help her change her behavior. But now, it seems like there's too much damage to fix. I'm not even sure if I want to try. This whole situation is so exhausting because just when I thought I was done with my family forever, they came back in the worst way possible. At this point, all I have left to do is block them, which I will do. Although I still have doubts about whether to block my sister or not. It's not her fault that my parents are like this. I also don't know why, but I still can't believe that a girl can go to such extremes, even with the parents she was given. Update 3. A few weeks passed, but that was the time it took me to call my sister to have a conversation with her. I'm not going to say it was easy because she still believed all my parents' lies. However, after a few seconds, during which I asked her to let me tell my side and then make her decision, she opened up to me. I told her the real reason why I had left when she was practically a baby, how our parents saw me, and how they saw her. At least with that, I was able to get her not to be so angry with me for supposedly having abandoned her years ago. I then told her the version my parents had given me about her being a problem child. She immediately denied it, saying that she was a normal girl who didn't like school very much, but didn't skip school, much less take substances or hang out with people who used those things. So, I told her that my parents were probably lying to get money out of me, all thanks to a sad story about how they had lost the house where I grew up and had to sell things. Surprisingly, that part was true. My sister told me that they did have to move, sell valuable family items, and tighten their belts. However, my sister couldn't believe that her parents had blamed her when, in fact, it was they who had caused all of this. According to my sister, my father had lost a lot of money gambling, while my mother spent excessively on unnecessary purchases. Here were my parents claiming that they had spent money on my sister's rehab when, in reality, they were the ones who needed rehab for their addictions. I asked her if my parents had sought help for those problems, but she didn't know much since they usually kept her away from all that. She only knew the broad details because the problems were obvious. My mother always came home with something new, while my father went out on Friday or Saturday nights, saying he was going to the casino. Then there were the shouting matches between them, where they would accuse each other of things, and my sister could hear everything. So, all this explains why my sister was mad at me. According to my parents, I was the bad guy who abandoned the family and couldn't even go help. At least, that was the lie they told my sister all these years. After so much effort to have a daughter, they ruined it with their problems. Before we finished the conversation, I asked her if she was okay because I was afraid my parents might be neglecting or mistreating her. I think I am a clear example that they are capable of that. However, she told me no, that they gave her all her meals and took care of her basic needs. I told her that she could call me whenever she liked because I would love to be part of her life, and she said she would. So, some of this has turned out well. I have recovered, or rather, gained a sister thanks to my parents. Their contact, after so many years, has served some purpose. I hope at least to have a relationship with her, even though, with my parents nearby, I don't know what to expect from all this. Update 4. A month ago, I started having contact with my sister. We called each other and sent messages from time to talk and catch up, since we didn't know much about each other. We talked a little about her school, her friends, and her plans for the future, while I shared details about my job and the things I like to do, like hobbies and that kind of stuff. A few days ago, my sister called me late at night, whispering. I woke up, and when I saw her number on the screen, I got desperate. No one calls you at 2 in the morning unless it's an emergency. She told me she had to talk like that because my parents had taken her phone away as punishment. They had discovered our chats, and it made them angry. So, they confiscated her phone. She had managed to get it back late at night, after they had fallen asleep, and was calling me to let me know she wouldn't be able to talk to me anymore, at least for a while. I could tell from her voice that she was in bad shape. She explained that when they read all our messages, they started questioning her about what we had talked about. That's when she confronted them and mentioned the lies they had told, which led to her being grounded and having her phone taken away. According to my sister, they had only yelled at her, but she sounded too distraught for it to just be a punishment. It seemed like there was something more. I don't know, call it a sixth sense or a connection between siblings, but after we ended the call, I didn't feel good at all about the situation. Knowing my parents and how they've been with me, I don't think it's crazy to assume there could be something more going on. Even though my sister was everything they wanted, that doesn't mean she couldn't be mistreated by people who are so mentally unstable as to throw away a child just because he wasn't a girl. I spent a few days thinking about it, and it was eating me up inside. I couldn't call or message my sister because I knew my parents would read it, and the situation would get even worse. What I did a few hours ago was call Child Protective Services. I was worried, so I asked them how long it would take to act. They told me that within 24 hours, they would send someone to evaluate the situation. I explained to them that I had no proof that my parents might be mistreating my sister, but I didn't know what else to do. Luckily, they reassured me, telling me they could investigate and evaluate the conditions in which my sister lives. I did think about going to my parents' house to see it with my own eyes, but I also considered the fact that, if they were capable of doing something to my sister just for talking to me, I don't know what could happen if I showed up there. They might act like nothing's wrong, only to make things worse for her afterward. I'm not trained to spot signs of abuse, nor can I take my sister away from there. That would be kidnapping. It was better to call people who are trained for these situations. I will return with an update once Child Protective Services provides me with a report or some feedback about their assessment. Update 5. I know I have a lot of unanswered private messages and comments, and I hope this post clarifies several of your doubts. If it doesn't, perhaps in a couple of days, I'll return to sit down, read everything more carefully, and respond. I've been busy adjusting to living with my sister, who is also my housemate. I think you can imagine what happened. Child Protective Services found out that there was abuse by my parents. That's the short version of what happened. Now comes the long version. Child Protective Services went to my parents' house and not only found signs of abuse, such as my sister not eating well or receiving appropriate food for a child, but they also discovered she had recently been beaten. What my parents called punishment was, in reality, physical abuse. She still had the bruises when the representatives from Child Protective Services arrived. One of the representatives spoke to my sister alone, and she was able to tell them some things after they assured her that they could take her away from that house. At first, she didn't want to open up because she was afraid of what our parents might do to her if she were taken back home. But when they guaranteed that they would get her out of there, she asked to be taken to my house. She told them everything in detail, and later, she said it to me too. I'm not going to repeat here what she shared, but it was terrible. A few days later, Child Protective Services brought her to my house. I couldn't refuse to accept her, especially since I know very well what it's like to live with our parents. This happened just a month ago, so it's been quite an adjustment. I hadn't even seen her since she was a baby, so she was practically unrecognizable to me. But we've adapted as best we could. For now, she sleeps in a makeshift room in my living room, as I only have one bedroom in my house. Everything happened so fast that I haven't had time to prepare something better. However, we're already looking for a bigger place with 2 rooms so she can have her own space. As for my parents, I don't know much about them, but they're forbidden from coming near my house or my sister's, and therefore mine, which is good. Otherwise, they could get into even more trouble. They already face several charges for mistreating their daughter, so I don't think they're willing to add more complications to their list. Update 6. A brief update for all of you who have cared about my story. My sister and I have moved and found a place that's a little bigger. It's not much bigger, but at least it has a room for each of us. Regarding my parents, I can only say that they've had to take an anger management course in addition to paying a fine. It's not much, and they should honestly be spending time behind bars. But at least my sister doesn't have to return to them, and that's the only thing that matters to me. My parents already have enough problems beyond those related to Child Protective Services, such as their gambling issues, compulsive shopping, and debts. I don't know all the details, but from what my sister has told me, these problems were already significant when she was still living with them.